So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lydia Olson, and I'm the technical specialist at the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance. I'd like to welcome you to the Rainwater Readiness 2025 Stormwater Workshop webinar series. This webinar series offers information about grant and loan programs that are available to be utilized for stormwater management projects by managers for municipalities, nonprofits, and other organizations that may be considering such projects in the future. For this webinar series, topics and schedule, please visit the Mass Rivers Alliance website listed here. We are still adding sessions to the series, so we recommend that you check the site frequently for the latest information. You will also find all the information and recordings for the in-person session of this series, which took place last week, and our previous Stormwater Workshop series in 2023 there. So today's webinar will, we'll be discussing federal loans, specifically the State Revolving Fund. And please mark your calendars for the next webinar, which is next Thursday, October 9th at noon. We'll be talking about grants available through Mass DEP's Watershed Planning Program. Just a few housekeeping items. The session is scheduled to end at 1 p.m. Please put your name and affiliation in the chat for our record keeping. Please put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, which Mass Rivers staff is tracking, or hold them until the last 15 minutes question and answer session. And these webinars are being recorded. Recordings and any other webinar materials will be made available on the Mass Rivers website. And lastly, we ask that you please complete the evaluation survey, which has been crucial in helping us continue and expand the series. We'll put links to this survey in the chat and also send it to you after the webinar. And now I'm delighted to introduce our speakers today. So up first would be Gregory Devine from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. He has worked in the municipal water and wastewater sector for over 20 years, with time in the private sector as an engineering consultant and in government with Mass DEP. As a design engineer, Mr. Devine engaged in a variety of planning, design, and construction projects for municipal clients across New England. In his time with Mass DEP, Gregory has served as project manager within the State Revolving Fund program, including his current role as section chief, responsible for oversight of all SRF finance projects in the Northeast and Western region, and select projects in Central and Southeast. He also manages the state's community septic management program and supports other agency and grant and loan programs. And then second, we'll have Avery Davis from the Environmental Finance Center. Avery Davis is a program manager from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. She specializes in communication and engagement for water and resiliency initiatives across EPA Region 2 and nationally through her work with the Environmental Finance Center Network, EFCN. With over 4 years of experience and a BS from Syracuse University, she provides technical assistance and training to local governments and utility leaders on topics including public outreach, education, workforce planning, and infrastructure funding. And then lastly, we'll have Matt Duff from the New England Environmental Finance Center. Matt Duff is the infrastructure specialist with the New England Environmental Finance Center. He has worked in environmental consulting as well as science education, with a majority of his professional career involving work in the water quality monitoring world. Okay, and I will hand it over to Greg to kick us off.
All right.
Sorry, and personally, I've never learned that much about it before, so this is great. So up next will be Avery, and just a couple of things before she gets started. If you haven't already, please put your name and affiliation in the chat. And since we want to make sure we get through all of our speakers, so we're probably going to have to run over. If you are going to have to leave at 1, please put any questions you have in the Q&A, and we will make sure that they get answered. And then they will be up on our website as well. So take it away, Avery.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. I won't spend too much time introducing myself, but just quickly, my name's Avery Davis. I'm a program manager with the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center, or EFC, which you're going to hear me say a lot. Really quick, how are we connected with the EFCN, or the Environmental Finance Center Network? And that is, well, we've been a longstanding partner of the network for quite a long time. And I'll go into more information shortly. But basically, the network is led by the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, based out of the University of New Mexico. And through this partnership, we carry out a number of EPA Office of Water funded programs to help communities like yours. All right, a little bit about us. So the Environmental Finance Center Network is a partnership of university and nonprofit-based organizations. And our goal is to create innovative solutions to the difficult how-to-pay issues of environmental protection and also water infrastructure. So we operate both collectively and independently as individual environmental finance centers to address these issues across the entire United States, so all 50 states, as well as all the territories, as well as the Navajo Nation. So we do this by providing free resources such as training opportunities, direct professional assistance or technical assistance, the production of durable resources, and innovative policy ideas. So I'm going to go quickly through our services, but the bulk of my section of today's session will be focused on primarily our technical assistance services related to helping you access the SRF. All right, so to start off, I'll just quickly mention some of our training opportunities. We deliver training both in person and virtual across all 50 states and territories to help communities, including their water systems, their wastewater systems, as well as stormwater systems, reach their technical, managerial, or financial goals. So these trainings, like I said, in person or virtual, they range a wide range of topics such as asset management, workforce planning, water and wastewater math, financial topics like what we're talking about today. So I will also mention that all of our trainings, especially our state trainings, we will always get pre-approved training contact hours for water and wastewater operators if they are available. So if you see a training for Massachusetts, know that we will do our hardest to get your operators their credits. This is just our training and events page. And related to the SRF, I just want to highlight an initiative we have going on currently, which is our SRF, State Revolving Fund, and Technical Assistance Office Hours. So this has been an ongoing initiative led by our partners at Quantified Ventures to help expand your knowledge and ultimately enhance your ability to navigate the state revolving funds. So we're super excited to have Quantified Ventures on our team. If you're not familiar with them, they're a firm that really specializes with navigating both public financing, but also the state revolving funds. A lot of them are former SRF managers, so they've done the dance, they've been in the state, and now are spending their time helping other communities navigate the process. So there's only a couple remaining sessions. I'll put the link in the chat, but all of the session summaries and the resources that were provided are available on the webpage if you're interested at all. All right. So get help, aka technical assistance. Technical assistance is, you can think about it as free customized support services. And for us, we deliver those services to water and wastewater utilities, local governments, and others who seek technical, managerial, and financial solutions to their water infrastructure problems. So I'm going to get more into our, like, who we serve, who's exactly eligible for our services shortly. But on the screen here is just a picture of our website, which I will give you a link to as well. Okay, access our resources. So we also do a number of resources that are all available to you at no cost. So various tools and publications, things on topics like affordability, asset management. I believe there's even a state revolving fund dashboard led by the Southwest DFC that's available to you. It's really tons of resources for you to browse and search through. We also offer a number of multimedia. We consider multimedia things like blogs, podcasts, educational videos. So lots of stuff out there for you to explore. And then finally, our funding tables. These are just compilations, a spreadsheet full of all the various water infrastructure funding sources in each state and territory. So I think it was last updated in 2024, so it might be a little behind for Massachusetts, but we do try to update those annually. Okay, technical assistance services. We're getting a little more specific now and some of our support services. But first, who is eligible for EFCN services? So we serve small drinking water systems that serve 10,000 people or fewer. So um, like like the rural systems that my co-presenter was just speaking to. We also serve small wastewater systems, and I would group any stormwater systems there as well, particularly those with an average daily wastewater flow of less than 1 million gallons per day, as well as decentralized systems, septic systems, etc. Some stuff that's not listed here beyond just the small and rural. We do also support um, systems or communities that are considered disadvantaged by your state standards. And if you aren't sure if you're eligible for our services, definitely reach out and we can help you figure it out. Before I get more specific into our actual services, I just want to call attention to all of this deep bench of expertise that our partners bring across the country. This has been a partnership building on more than a decade of delivering technical assistance, training, and other resources to communities nationwide. So, one thing I want to call attention to here is our friends at the New England Environmental Finance Center, who are so excited to be co-presenting with today. We're here with Matt Duff. So, I'll just quickly mention that the New England EFC has been a long-standing member of the EFCN, so we're super proud to be working with them. And they are the state of Massachusetts and EPA Region 1's Regional Environmental Finance Center. We also partner very closely with the New England EFC's program, the SNEP Network. We are super proud to be associated with the SNEP Network. And really, I bring this up because there is a connection among these programs. We do partner with each other, we do talk to each other. And so if you reach out to one and it really isn't the best fit, then we will do our hardest to connect you with the partner and the program that will best fit your needs. So just know that we're all coordinating with each other, and I'm excited for y'all to hear Matt next. All right, technical assistance services. So things we can help your community with are funding and financial management. I'll get more on this later, but this does include navigating and ultimately applying for programs such as the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, asset and utility management. So this could be things like creating an asset management plan, repairing or replacing equipment, managing your utility effectively, planning for climate threats, stuff like that. Regulatory compliance and reporting. So navigating things like the Davis-Bacon Act, Build America, Buy America, managing your NPDES permits, your MS4s, understanding Safe Drinking Water Act compliance, all sorts of compliance and regulatory needs. Public engagement and partnerships, more public engagement strategies, public involvement in decision making, regionalization partnerships, workforce development and leadership. So tackling your workforce challenges and solutions, leadership development, succession planning, recruitment support, salary studies, such a wide range of services. And finally, technical support, things like disinfection math, wastewater math, operator training, water reuse and recycling, I&I management, cybersecurity. There's so many services, and I will be dropping a link in the chat if you want to see a more comprehensive list. So now we're going to hone in on our funding support, specifically how it ties to the state revolving funds. So first, we help you identify the best fit funding program for your infrastructure project. So that includes things like the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, USDA programs, any state or local programs. And if you're really unsure where to start, our team is really great at helping you um, really identify what those first steps should be and ultimately help chart a path forward. Second, our team can provide guidance on eligibility requirements, procurement rules, application timelines. We all know that each funding program has its own rules, its own deadlines, and so we're there to walk you through those requirements, timelines, etc. We also offer hands-on support to help you develop both strong and competitive applications. So really, we can help with anything from actually doing, a little bit of grant writing ourselves, all the way to helping you get that submitted, navigating the the submission platforms, etc. We also offer guidance on long-term financial sustainability, cost effectiveness. So beyond just getting the grant, we help you think about really your long-term finances. Is it going to be sustainable in the long term, managing the award? Um, Other things like rate setting, asset management, customer affordability, really just making sure we've thought through some of these future implications. And finally, matching or supplementing funds that we've already received, or as I like to say, sewing the funding quilt. I'm sure you already know that oftentimes these infrastructure projects require more than one funding source to get you all the way from planning to construction implementation. So in addition to helping you find funding to fulfill things like match, we can also help you combine funding programs like the SRF with other state and federal sources to help fill those gaps, stretch your budgets, and in an ideal world, fully fund your projects. All right, so if you're interested in learning more, you can visit our website at efcnetwork.org. Um, and if you are interested in learning more about our technical assistance services in particular, you can do so by visiting that Get Help button in the corner. So I'm going to be dropping some links in the chat once I stop sharing. Here's a QR code if you are interested in visiting that request form, getting some more information on our services. We are really happy to talk to anyone and are so grateful to work with this great group of folks. So if you have any questions, happy to answer those. Otherwise, I will conclude here.
Thanks so much, Avery. That was really helpful. And I do have one question for you, but I will save it till the end for our question and answer section. Wonderful. So we will hand it over to Matt. And like I said, if we do end up running a little over and you have to leave by 1, please just leave any questions that you have in the question and answer, and we will get to them when we have time. Okay, awesome. Take it away, Matt.
Awesome. Sweet. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. I know we're a little behind on time, so I'll just fast forward here. So yeah, thank you so much, Lydia, for having me here today. Thanks, Avery and Greg. Avery, thanks for that great overview of the EFCN. Like she said, we work really close with the EFCN and with her EFC that she works with. She had mentioned that the EFCN more broadly delivers a lot of trainings and webinars and works sort of on the background of more some broad types of offerings, whereas then we have these environmental finance centers that sort of stand alone and offer more direct technical assistance. And so my environmental finance center, the New England Environmental Finance Center, which as she mentioned, we serve Region 1, all 6 of the New England states. We do some work with trainings and that type of work, but we are also more involved with sort of the one-on-one direct technical assistance. And so our work is sort of more about helping communities get ready for the process that is involved with getting ready for the state revolving fund and making sure that they're prepared for sort of that long slog of work, as Greg had mentioned earlier, sort of that long process that's involved with getting actually ready and prepared for the SRF, as there's a lot of sort of legwork that's required before you can just sort of fill out that application and try to apply for those funds. So, as part of the New England Environmental Finance Center, we have several funded programs that we have. One of those programs, the one that I'm here to talk about today, is the New England Water Infrastructure Network. And so, our NEWIN program, we specialize in water infrastructure, particularly helping communities, again, sort of get ready for the SRF program and sort of accessing those funds. And so, we really try to help communities bridge that gap and again get them sort of ready and into a position where they can then look towards the SRF. And so we're talking about drinking water projects, wastewater projects, and more specifically for this webinar, stormwater management and non-point source pollution issues. And so, again, we try to help communities leverage the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, but we can also assist in accessing and identifying various other funding sources. And so, the type of assistance that we provide, again, it's typically direct one-on-one technical assistance, but it can take many different forms depending on the projects that the communities have, the type of communities that we're working with. But it typically includes, working with the communities to develop some sort of customized technical, financial, or managerial solutions to the specific water challenges that they're facing. And so as part of our NEWIN program, we have a fantastic team of experts that range across many different fields in the environmental arena. And so we work with a network of core partners who we work really closely with on a lot of these projects. Specifically, in the bottom left there, you can see we work with Moonshot Missions, UMass Boston's Sustainable Solutions Lab, RCAP Solutions, Quantified Ventures, the University of New Hampshire's Stormwater Center, as well as CDI, or the Cooperative Development Institute. And so between our in-house NEWIN staff and all of these great partners, we can field a really great depth of expertise in all of these different areas, ranging from financial planning and strategizing, direct engineering support, asset management, reviews of stormwater infrastructure and capacity, working really closely on a community level through engagement and outreach. And so, again, all of this direct one-on-one assistance that can help put these communities in a much better position with their infrastructure projects to then be ready to go down this SRF path. And so, again, we're partnering closely with everyone from the federal government and governmental agencies to state departments, right down to municipalities of all sizes. We partner with community-based organizations, state departments. We work alongside tribes, water utilities, again, of all sizes, manufactured housing communities. We partner very closely with engineers and consultants. And so our strength really lies in these diverse partnerships that we've formed. These partnerships allow us to effectively, again, bridge that gap between the unique water challenges that we find in a lot of these New England communities and sort of bridging that gap between those challenges that they're facing and the funding opportunities that are available, particularly through the State Revolving Fund, so that we can help, make a reality, those challenges they're facing and make a reality those funding possibilities and solutions. And so with the approach NEWIN takes in trying to help get these communities ready to access SRF funding and put them in the best position possible to access the best deal that there is and get them in the best position to have their projects shovel ready and as ready to go as they can. We try to meet the community where they're at and really try to work with them at whatever stage of the process of their project that they're at. So it could be coming in the middle of their project, or we could come in at the very beginning stages and work with them throughout the entire project to the point where they're on the priority list, get approved for funding, and then we can continue with them all the way up to the construction phase. And so, we believe that securing the funding isn't just about, helping them fill out that application and helping them secure that funding. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes before that process, and a lot of work that continues on after that stage. And so we start with forming partnerships and really engaging with the community, building those relationships out, and really trying to understand what the needs of the community is. And then working with the community after we really understand what the needs are, we help and work with them and collaborate with them to really plan out the project, assess what the needs are, assess what the most logical steps forward are, help identify exactly what's needed, work with them to assess what's really achievable given the scope of the project. And then after that, we really try to help guide communities through that project development phase, where we then, try to translate those plans that we've worked together to form, and then we try to turn that into concrete proposals. And then, of course, we're really focusing heavily on that funding and financing aspect, because we all know that all of these projects and ideas are just that until you can find a way to fund or finance them. And so to really get those projects to that implementation or construction phase, you have to work through that process of figuring out how to fund or finance them. And again, Newen's goal is to help those communities work through that SRF process and do that using that as the SRF program. And then finally, we can be there all the way through the construction phase. And importantly, we can be there as sort of overall project managers for the community, particularly for capacity constraint communities who could really just use help in managing the overall flow of the projects with all the details that are involved, all of the paperwork that's involved, all of the different aspects that a lot of communities don't really realize that go on with a lot of these, particularly, large scale water infrastructure projects. Just a lot of the behind the scenes work that is involved, particularly when they're trying to utilize the SRF. So just trying to be there to help them along with the process, answer questions for them, and sort of be that middleman or bridging that gap between the community, the state agencies, the engineers, just being there for the community along the way. Now, just briefly, I'm going to just mention a couple projects that are examples of the type of TA work that we do with communities. So this is one example that we did over the summer with a community in Massachusetts, in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And so this is a good example of how Newen can sort of step in at different points of a process and sort of meet the community at where they're at. And so in this case, before we even were able to really get into SRF details with the community, the first step was to really sort of get a clearer picture of what was happening on the ground. And so in Mansfield, there were a few at-risk sites in town where flooding, drainage issues, and erosion were causing some problems. And so the community needed some practical technical support before moving ahead with funding. And so this was sort of a case of needing a better understanding of what the problems were and needing to know what the problems were and what funding was really appropriate and which sites needed to be prioritized for that funding before that we could really advance to that next stage of actually going after the funding. So an example of how Newen can sort of come in at a really early stage and sort of help that community advance to that next stage of funding. And so in this particular project, we were working with our partners at the University of New Hampshire Stormwater Center. And so we went and did a site visit in the middle of the summer, this past summer in July. And we did a site visit at 3 different sites in Mansfield and assessed the issues that were going on. And we were able to come up with some tailored recommendations for things like improving culverts and outfalls to reduce flooding, addressing maintenance issues in areas with a lot of impervious surface, and stabilizing stream banks where erosion was creating some safety concerns. On top of the site work, we also were able to review Mansfield stormwater regulations. Right now, they have some bylaws that refer back to the state handbook, but it doesn't really have much in terms of local water quality standards or permitting flexibility. And so we were able to suggest some updates and some updates that included some things like capturing smaller projects without being overly burdensome, and also some stronger operation and maintenance requirements for private stormwater systems. And so the outcome, it wasn't just a set of immediate fixes, but we were able to provide sort of more of a roadmap for Mansfield to get ahead of upcoming MS4 and state stormwater handbook revisions. And so again, it's just sort of a good reminder that Newen's role isn't just limited to helping communities at sort of that end stage of the funding. We can also provide more hands-on assistance at really any stage, from identifying risks on the ground to strengthening local regulations and to preparing communities to move confidently, in that pre-process stage before you move on to that funding stage. The last project I'm going to mention is a project that we're currently involved in Newmarket, New Hampshire. It's a small coastal community. And so this is another good example of how Newen can support communities beyond just that technical design or SRF paperwork. So the town already ranked #1 on New Hampshire's CWSRF project priority list for a $1.5 million stormwater infrastructure loan. The challenge with this project wasn't the engineering or the ranking. It was that the town needed voter approval to borrow the money. And the first time around, the vote had failed. And so instead of diving into the funding mechanics, our role for this was to sort of step back and focus on community outreach. And so we're currently working with the town staff to better understand why that original 2025 vote had failed, and trying to help develop an outreach and communication strategy to build support in the community. And so that includes things like a site visit to understand conditions firsthand, conducting interviews with stakeholders, and crafting outreach materials to explain the benefits of the project in a more clear and relatable way. And so the goal here is that when the project does eventually come back to a vote in 2026, the town is going to have the public buy-in that it needs to be able to secure that authority to borrow and unlock that $1.5 million in SRF funding. And so what's equally important in that is that the outreach materials that we're going to be developing, it can also be adapted for future stormwater projects, making this a long-term investment in capacity. And it could also serve as a great example for future Massachusetts stormwater projects that might be facing similar issues. And so again, just to conclude, it could be a great example for Massachusetts as well, because it shows how Newen isn't just about the technical pieces. We can really step in wherever community needs us, whether that's engineering support, funding, navigation, or helping build the local support that's necessary to make these projects become a reality. And with that, I will stop sharing and turn it back to you, Lydia. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Highly recommend everyone getting in touch with Matt and Avery for technical assistance. And so again, we're almost to the scheduled time, but if people want to stay after and ask questions of our speakers, if they don't have to run, you're more than welcome. So I will go to the Q&A now. Also, if you have a question you want to ask directly, feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you. But for right now, it looks like for the Q&A, we only have one question so far. And I guess this would be for Greg, but when is the next annual solicitation period for the SRF?
Good question. And there's a lot of material that Avery and Matt threw at you to kind of compliment us. But, our annual solicitation period is typically late May through about July 1 each year. So right now we are looking at our next solicitation period to open around May of 2026, and that will be for funding considerations in calendar year 2027.
Awesome. So if people are going to start considering stuff now, they should start talking to Avery and Matt.
Absolutely. And that gives us about a 6-month run up to that. And what I will say is, with that answer, that's for your traditional construction project. Throughout this period, we can receive planning projects and different other elements, as I spoke to briefly about some of the other things that we accept on a rolling basis. So by no means do we have to wait
Oh,
until next spring for some of these programs to launch.
awesome.
But yeah,
That
very
sounds
much get Avery and Matt engaged early on because they are certainly going to be, super helpful in terms of navigating those early steps in the process for sure.
wonderful. And then I actually had a question for Avery, just out of curiosity. So I know in your presentation, you said you guys provide free assistance to communities of a certain size or wastewater, um, uh, communities that produce
Mhm.
wastewater of a certain amount. Can people still come to you for not free assistance, and then also get technical assistance for a certain fee, or is that you only have so much time in the day to help people, and so you only help people who meet those requirements?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of our work is funded by there's two recurring EPA programs that we've gotten pretty consistently, and that is really what determines our eligible uh, audience there. So we don't offer any paid services for larger communities. However, all of us do work on a number of projects outside of the network too. So it's still worth reaching out, still worth having a conversation. Like I said, even if you're not considered small, um, that there's some wiggle room there if you are considered disadvantaged, if you are considered, or oftentimes too, even if you're not directly considered disadvantaged, if there's room for even something like you could be if there was something like an income survey. We've definitely seen
Okay.
that as well, where we can see is there wiggle room, is there a reasonable belief that you could reach that threshold.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds great.
Mhm.
I would just add that to what Avery said too. If like your community has experienced some sort of like disaster, like recently too, like if there's like an oil spill in your community or like hurricane or some sort of natural disaster, that can sometimes increase like the wiggle room that's available to get assistance.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that wouldn't be good for the community, but that is good to know. Um, okay. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Feel free to put your hand up or again, put them in the chat. I think that's a good sign that you guys covered most of it, and hopefully people are going to your websites to sign up for technical assistance, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Just give it one more minute just in case. Okay, and with that, it doesn't look like there are any more questions. As Anna just put in the chat, please take a few minutes to fill out our webinar survey because that helps us plan for next year, and brings you speakers like these three wonderful people that we've had today. And we will make sure to send around an email with all of the links that were posted. And of course, and the webinar recordings and everything will be available on the website, so you can talk to these people afterwards as well, if you have specific questions for them. But thank you everyone so much for coming. Thank you very much to our speakers. It was wonderful to have you, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.